Good morning, everybody. I'm Judy Kennedy. I usually drop the Flanagan. It's just too many syllables for kind of informal speaking here. But I first, uh, as you know, Lynn is a coastal city north of Boston, about 10 miles north of Boston. We have a population of about 90,000 people, making us the ninth largest city in Massachusetts. But we have the fifth largest school system. We've seen a great increase in our school system over the past couple of years. And in the fall of 2012, my school superintendent came to me and said, I've been noticing a large number of unaccompanied minors, unaccompanied children, coming in from Guatemala. And they're all coming, she thought it was a city, it turns out it's a province. They're all coming from San Marcos. So I don't understand how all of these people from San Marcos are making their way up to Lynn. So we looked at the numbers, and from September 10th through June 2011, we had a total of 2 new out of country admissions from Guatemala. From September 11th through June of 2012, we had 26 out of country admissions from Guatemala into the school system. Now, from September 12th to September 2013, the period at which the superintendent noticed this, we had 84 new admissions from out of country from Guatemala. So we started to look into this a little bit. And a lot of these children that were coming into our city were coming through a place called the Jubilee Center in San Antonio, Texas. So our first thought was to find out what is this Jubilee Center and what's going on here. As best we could determine, it appears to be a type of clearinghouse that is used to resettle these people who are coming across the border. And they are not all children. One of the things that we did notice when we were processing some of these students coming in was that they were adults. They were all claiming to be somewhere between, well, the vast majority of them were claiming to be between 14 and 17 years old. But there were people with graying temples, hair around the temples. There were people with more wrinkles than I have around their eyes. And we were told through a directive from the Department of Justice that we were not to question or attempt to verify these ages. A lot of the children gave a birth date of January 1st. A lot of them could not sign their names. They had to sign their names with an X. And a lot of them were illiterate not only in English, but also in Spanish, and spoke a tribal dialect, a mountain dialect, so that it really made it difficult to place these students in any kind of a classroom setting. So what we decided to do in that 2012 to 2013 school year, there were 56 of these unaccompanied minors that were placed in a night school. And they were fed, they were given a meal at the night school, and during the day they were allowed to go about their business. Some of them chose to work, many of them worked in landscaping in those warmer months. And that was working fine until the lawyers stepped in. I consider myself a recovering lawyer, and when I tell you something like this, you'll understand why. And they said, you are not giving these children an education equal to your full-time daytime program. You have to have 990 hours of education. So you either have to expand your night school program to 990 hours, or you have to integrate them into your regular public high schools. Well, the superintendent chose to do the latter. But because we have these students who are illiterate, we're not putting alleged 15 and 16-year-olds in classrooms next to 6 or 7-year-olds. So we decided to put them into the 9th grade. Now that meant that from September 2012 through June of 2013, we had 56 unaccompanied minors from Guatemala placed in the 9th grade alone. We decided that we needed to find out from the federal government what was going on. Why were we getting all of these new students, and why were they all coming from the same province? So we started to meet with Senator Scott Brown from Massachusetts, and unfortunately, he lost his election a couple of months after that to Elizabeth Warren, who became our senator. And for a variety of reasons, we did not pursue this with Senator Warren. We kind of suffered in silence up in Lynn and did the best we could with these students. Now, from September of 2013 to June of 2014, this trend showed no signs of abating. Ninth grade admissions for children from Guatemala totaled 101 for the school year September 2013 to 2014. That's almost double what we had gotten the year before. As you recall, that number was 56. And at the same time, there was starting to get to be some national exposure about this issue. So the superintendent and I decided we were no longer going to sit back and just take these students, but speak out and let the federal government know that all of the places that were housing these unaccompanied children, places like Fort Sill and places like Murrieta that were getting Murrieta, California, that were getting a lot of these students, were not the only communities affected, that there were people as far north as little old Lynn, Massachusetts, that were being affected by this. And I have to tell you an interesting story, and this really made us sit up and take notice. And it showed us that some of these people truly are illiterate in both of the languages. When one gentleman presented his papers to the school department, to the Parent Information Center to enroll in school, he presented an arrest warrant with it. But because he couldn't read, he didn't realize he was presenting his own arrest warrant. So we called the local police, who in turn called ICE, who in turn declined to detain this gentleman, and we don't know where he went. He didn't enroll in school, but we don't really know what happened to him. So we have been struggling with the number of students that we have received. And just as give you an idea of whether the trend is continuing or not, because if you believe the press, sorry to those of you here, but if you believe what the federal government tells us in the press, these numbers have curtailed significantly. Now, we all know that the train broke down. We also know during warmer weather, historically, there's been a decline in the border crossings because who wants to go through the desert in July? But right now, prior to the opening of the 2014-2015 school year, we have 10 new students enrolled. Just between that number I gave you from June of 2014 and now, we have 10 more ninth grade students enrolled, and one more 10th and one more 11th from Guatemala. So Lynn is not seeing any reversal of that trend. Obviously, this has affected our school system. As I said, although we have the 9th largest population in Massachusetts, we have the 5th largest school department population. We have to hire aides for these students. We have to find classroom space for these students. We have to also spend more money on all of these students. Massachusetts has a school spending formula. For each school department, there's a different dollar cost per student that has to be met. In our particular case, and in all cases actually, we have to have that baseline amount to spend per student. Thereafter, if the student is an English language learner, there is a premium put on that base requirement. And if the student comes in with special emotional needs, which many of these students do, there is yet another premium put on that base. Now, unfortunately, I cannot separate out refugees from legal immigrants from unaccompanied minors. But I can tell you that the trend for out-of-country admissions to the school system in total from all countries has gone from 54 in the year 2010-2011, the school year, to 329 from 2011 to 2012, to 421 from 12 to 13, and we had, 538 from 2013 to 2014. And as I said, we've had 10 in the 9th grade from Guatemala already prior to the opening of this school year. So we have been trying to accommodate this. We have built a new middle school. However, That school is not scheduled to open till September of 2016, and it is already deemed to be overcrowded before its doors even open. We've also seen a real uptick in our public health services that are required because all students have to be vaccinated before they come into our school system. So just by comparison, let me see, July of 2013, well, let's take July of 2011. My health department gave out 11 vaccinations. In July of 2013, the health department gave out 129 vaccinations. In July of 2014, the health department gave out 159 vaccinations. Now, we've only had our public health clinic open for vaccinations a couple of hours a week historically. But because of this surge, we've had to increase the number of nurses that we have and increase the number of hours that our clinic is open. And although I have not yet put a firm dollar cost on how much all of these accommodations have cost the city of Lynn, I do know that because of primarily the increase in my required school department spending has caused me, when crafting my FY 2015 budget, to have to cut all of my other departments between 2 and 5% on their total that they had gotten for last year's spending, whereas my school department has gotten a 9.3% increase. Now, how that affects Lynn in real life, I had a great program in Lynn, a community policing program where the 6 sectors of the city of Lynn, as the police have divided it, each had their own bike cop, and the bike cops were there to take care of quality of life issues, to look into problems before they got to be big problems, to keep an eye on gang recruitment. And over the last few years, the city of Lynn has managed to bring down its number of known gang members and affiliates from about 1,300 down to 350. And I attribute that decline in large part to the community policing program that we have had in place. That program can no longer be continued because that money has had to be diverted to the school department. Simple things, day-to-day things like trash collection. When there are more people in the community, the tonnage goes up. When the tonnage goes up, the tipping fees go up because I have more trash to dispose of. I've already given you the example of how the public health department has had to borrow from within other lines of what we call the inspectional services department. That is actually where our health department is located for budgeting purposes, and we've already had to take from other line items in inspectional services to accommodate the needs in the public health department. We have gotten frustrated, and I decided when I saw that these stories were becoming national news that to speak out about it. I have met with officials from ICE, and they will tell you that they were talking at this time when the detention facilities were becoming a big issue. And they said, well, things are really great because 80% of the people can get resettled, and we only retain about 20% of the people in the detention facilities. Well, the 80% of those people who are being resettled are coming to places like Lynn. And I'm not here to talk about broad federal immigration policy because that's something for the federal officials to work out. I'm simply here to explain to the federal officials that their actions or inactions will affect places that are on a map in such a way that they would never be considered to be affected by their decision making, but they truly are. Now, Lynn has always had a thriving Guatemalan community. We have a community of about, well, at least as of a couple of years ago, it was about 2,400 people. And when these students are coming in from Guatemala and they are asked down at the Jubilee Center where they might know somebody, naturally they're going to say, well, we know people in Lynn, because there already is a sizable community here. And it's a natural place for them to want to resettle. And I just guess that I am looking for a more equitable solution from the federal government. And whether that equity comes in the form of giving me a regional school so that these students can be educated regionally rather than becoming a strain on my particular school system, or whether it becomes a form of financial aid so that a city like Lynn can have more money to deal with the issue, or whether it becomes a question of having other surrounding school systems pick up part of the overflow here and become a little pressure valve to take the pressure off of my community. I'm not proposing that any one solution is better than any other, but I am simply asking that the federal government be made aware of what happens in communities where these unaccompanied children are settled and what we have to do about it. The other issue that I do want to bring up here is that none of these children come in with any criminal record history. So we have no way of knowing whether they have been in trouble criminally in their home countries. We have to simply accept what we get at face value. And I think that does pose a potential danger for my children and for my community at large. And I'd just like to see something done about it. So when I heard Jessica Vaughn on the radio, I reached out to her. I said, "Can I talk to you?" And she said, "Oh my God, I've heard about your community. I'd really like to talk to you as well." And for the last couple of months, Jessica and I have been working together, trying to get the word out, trying to keep this discussion, at least from my point of view, on a purely economic level. I don't want to start casting aspersions on people. Lynn is a very diverse community. I love the fact that Lynn is a diverse community. By speaking out about this, I have been called a racist. I have been called a hater. That is not the case. I'm simply looking at this from the point of view of the economic impact it has had on my city.